Salam guys, so today I'm going to be doing a reaction video to a Ben Shapiro compilation. I've seen some of his stuff before and personally I found them hilarious. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of his politics on certain things, but you know, his kind of roast compilations, his destruction video compilations I do find quite funny. So I'm going to be doing a reaction to this one. So yeah, so without further ado, let's get started.
I have said over and over and over on this program, listen to every episode since Parkland, I've said these kids have a right to speak out. Of course they have a right to speak out. This is America. When I was 17 years old, I had a syndicated columnist. But this comes with a caveat. The caveat is you will get criticized. People will criticize you. People will pick apart what you are saying publicly, especially when you're the type of person who goes on national television and suggests that all those who disagree with you are actually akin to child murderers. If you do that, it turns out people get pissed off. Okay, but the media have decided that any criticism of these kids whatsoever, not their right to speak, not their expertise, right? If you criticize the stuff they are saying, if you say what they are saying is wrong, or if you say, I don't think that they are conducting themselves properly publicly, right? If you say that sort of stuff, then you are a hater, then you are brutal, then you are doing something terrible. And I think a lot of what these kids have been saying is wrong, non-factual. I think some of what they've been saying is immoral when they suggest that Marco Rubio is akin to the shooter in Parkland. And when they say that Dana Lash is a murderer with blood on her hands, this stuff is disgusting. And I have, not only do I have every right, I have every moral obligation to speak up against it because it's gross. And this is what CNN tweeted out yesterday, quote, "A brief history of how Parkland survivor David Hogg keeps schooling lawmakers on social media." Yeah, that sounds like objective journalism to me. Right? Political activism on the left is not going to come back and bite you. Right? It's the ultimate extracurricular activity for most college administrators. And a couple of days ago, there was a tweet that came out from Planned Parenthood in some podunk town in which Planned Parenthood tweeted, "We need a Disney princess who is transgender. We need a Disney princess who has had an abortion." Okay, and I said, well, what we really need is a Disney princess who uses her royal authority to defund Planned Parenthood. So I think that people have a willingness to blind themselves to facts that they don't want to see. And so what I've seen a lot is people saying, well, the problem of sexual harassment isn't unique to Hollywood and has nothing to do with our culture regarding sex, a leftist culture regarding sex. No, it has to do generally with men. Right? It has to do generally with American society. It has to do generally with power relationships. It's funny how everybody is willing to generalize as soon as their ox is gored. Right? As soon as the left sees, wait, our culture, our feminist culture that we said that we were going to promulgate and was going to protect women hasn't protected women, you know, nearly at all, then all of a sudden it turns into, well, it's not us that sin, it's men that sin.
So on the way over here, we got in a discussion about the wage gap. What was your opinion on this?
I mean, it's not my opinion, it's statistical fact. This is Time magazine actually found as early as 2010 that in the 50 biggest cities in the United States, women were actually earning more than men. If they had the same job qualifications, the same number of years in the workforce, the same number of hours worked, the reason that women on average are paid less is because women take time off, they take less risky jobs, they don't take as much time at work, they would rather be home with their families. These are choices that women make, and it's astonishing to me that feminists actually degrade those choices as though it's a terrible thing when a woman takes time off. Well, it's her choice. I mean, I thought that was your whole deal. The right believes that the basis for the Second Amendment, and they believe in the Second Amendment, the basis for the Second Amendment is not really about self-defense and it's not about hunting. It is about resistance to government tyranny. That's what the founders said, and that's what the right believes in this country.
Which tyranny are you fearing yourself?
I fear the possibility of a tyranny rising in this country in the next 50 to 100 years. Let me tell you something, Piers. The fact that my grandparents and great-grandparents in Europe didn't fear that is why they are now ashes in Europe.
So women should just, say suck it and have a child, suck it up and have a child?
Well, if you get pregnant, yes, because you don't get to kill things just because it's in your uterus.
It's my body, how about you just stay out of it?
How about it's dangerous,
how
you
about
don't get to kill it because
you're
it's in
talking
there.
so much about how...
I don't care about your appendix. I don't care about your thorax. I don't even care about your uterus. I care about what's in it. Through all the most unfunny people from Comedy Central, you got Stephen Colbert, who used to be on Comedy Central and is no longer funny, Samantha Bee, who's never very funny, and Trevor Noah, who in the womb must have been just smacked with the unfunny jar. Like God took down the various jars to make a human being, and he took the humorlessness jar and he poured it all over Trevor Noah as prenatally. Okay, so the fact is that some people are born poor, and put race aside for a second, some people are born poor and some people are born rich in America. Right? We can acknowledge this. Some people are born poor and some people are born rich. That does not mean that, number one, the poor people have a right to go to the rich people and take away their money, because that's called theft. And second of all, it also does not mean that making individual good decisions does not allow the poor person to become rich. There's tremendous income mobility in the country even still. And so the idea is, if the idea is that your grandfather, your great-grandfather, couldn't go to college because of the racism in the GI Bill after World War II, and that's why you flunked out of high school, I don't buy it. The reality is that abortion is not a complex issue. It's a very simple issue. That's either a life or it isn't. It's that simple. If it's a life, you can't kill it. If it's not a life, you can do whatever you want. It's a kidney, right? So, and then it becomes, okay, so how do we define life? And the answer to me is you define life by the same way that you would define life if you found it on Mars, right? If you found a single-celled organism on Mars, it's a life, right? I know, as somebody who has one baby and another on the way, you know, that what's in there is not a random piece of tissue. At the very least, even if you don't believe it's a life yet, it's certainly a potential human life. And that seems to be more valuable than your convenience. And there's something nasty and cruel and degrading about the idea that you get to decide whether something is a life or not based on whether it's convenient to you. Income inequality is the stupidest issue. Income inequality means nothing, right? I mean, I have a lot of income inequality with Bill Gates, but I'm doing pretty well, and I don't care that Bill Gates is doing really well. The only thing we should all care about is that there are poor people. We should figure out how poor people can do better, not how to make Bill Gates less rich. As soon as I say, well, you know, I don't see evidence of broad discrimination in American life. Oh, you're ignorant. Oh, you don't want to look it in the face. You're not acknowledging your white privilege. And it's like, well, no, I like evidence for my propositions. And if you are going to suggest that all of America is racist, then they need to answer your question, which is no. Like, why? Where are you seeing this? There is virtue that has been attributed to victimhood, and when you take away somebody's victimhood, they feel as though you have attacked their identity, which is one of the reasons I think that I get protested on campuses, because I say so often that if you're a woman in America, you're not a victim. If you're a black person in America, you are not inherently a victim. If you're a Jew in America, you're not a victim. If you're LGBT, that doesn't mean you're a victim, right? You have to show me how you were victimized, and then we can talk about whether you're a victim. But people's feelings are easily offended when they have invested their entire meaning in being a victim.
Is that you said a vast majority, right? There are women out there who know that it is a child.
And you make law and public policy based on the vast majority, not on the outlying case.
Yeah, but then you can't make a claim that abortion is the same as murder if you wouldn't treat them the same in public policy or in law. And
no, I absolutely can, because there are many types of murder, right? I mean, there's manslaughter.
Yeah.
There's
so
unintentional murder.
I mean, like, what would your standards be?
So the doctor knows. That's why I'm saying the doctor has the mens rea. The doctor has the actual intent to commit a murder, because the doctor full well knows that that is a baby in there whose beating heart he or she is stopping.
So indirect manslaughter.
What was that?
So you would put them on trial for indirect manslaughter.
I would put Kermit Gosnell on trial for first-degree murder. You know, I would put abortionists on trial for either second-degree murder or manslaughter. I mean, this is a crime against humanity that's occurring. And if you believe that, obviously, to be ideologically consistent, you have to say that. And this has been, again, the traditional pro-life position. I'm not aware of any major pro-lifer in America who believes that women should be put on trial for abortion.
There are better workforce efficiently on a global scale.
Redistribution of wealth does not achieve competition, because it turns out that what actually achieves competition is the sort of values that you impose in your work life. This is why if you have a bunch of people who win the lottery, disproportionately people who are poor and win the lottery end up poor again. The reason people are permanently poor in the United States is not because they don't have money, it's because they suck with money. The reason people are temporarily poor is because they don't have money. The reason they're permanently poor, okay, this is self-evident, folks, that's not even controversial. If you're poor in America your entire life, you are not great with money by definition. Okay, if you are, name me one person in America who's phenomenal with money, but is poor for 80 years in the United States. You're not changing anybody's mind. All you're showing everybody is that your collective IQ, if it were channeled into electricity, might be able to toast a piece of bread lightly. Okay, and I'm not denying your humanity if you're a transgender person. I am saying that you are not the sex to which you claim to be. You're still a human being, and you're a human being with an issue that I wish you Godspeed in dealing with in whatever way you see fit. But if you are going to dictate to me that I'm supposed to pretend that men are women and women are men, no. My answer is no. I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
Okay, but you're still saying these kids should not be accepted because they don't really fit in either place? They can't just
I'm saying that the Boy Scouts have a standard. You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy to be a Boy Scout.
Where's that written though? Okay.
In the name Boy Scouts. I will ask you how old you are, okay? Because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So.
I'm 22, so I'm probably young and naive, right?
No. Why aren't you 60? Why aren't you 60?
Because it...
And why? Why can't you identify as 60? What is the problem with you identifying as 60?
Because it's not the same as gender. You can't just...
You're right. Age is significantly less important than gender. You can't magically change your gender. You can't magically change your sex. You can't magically change your age.
You can still legally change it. People recognize
You can't legally change your age, by the way.
Obviously. You can change your name, you can change your sex, you can change your identity.
Just because you can do things legally doesn't mean that they are correct biologically. So, she says that she's thinking about reproductive rights 1 minute from having a baby. This is about as perverse a notion as I could possibly imagine. That as you're about to have your child, you're thinking, boy, wouldn't it be great if I could still kill this thing? It's really imperative that I be able to still kill this thing. You know, here I am. Look how pregnant I am. There's a baby in here. This is my beautiful child. And I was thinking, maybe I should just kill it. You know, it's really important that women be able to kill it anytime they please. She continues along these lines, not, of course, understanding really what she's saying on a moral level. That's an individual human being, and if that baby were outside the womb and you stuck a knife through its chest, you'd be charged with first-degree murder. You kill it in the womb, and we call it a human right. That's not a human right because that's a human, and that human doesn't have any rights because you just decided its rights are less important than your right to your own convenience. Despicable. Despicable. I mean, everything has been deemed hate speech on campus, up to and including there was a point during the election cycle when people were barred on certain campuses from writing President Trump's name when he was a candidate because this made people feel bad that some people actually supported Trump as a candidate. So I can only imagine that anti-immigrant rhetoric would be things like let's enforce our border or let's deport some illegal immigrants. But that's not a shock. Again, Penn State is one of the campuses that I visited, and there was a near riot when I was at Penn State. So I'm sure that some of the people who were protesting against the conservatives on campus, and it was some conservative groups who they were protesting, were some of the same people who a couple of years ago nearly tried to break through the doors where I was speaking to disrupt the lecture that I was giving. What's amazing about all of this is that it is perfectly easy to have a nice event where people come and listen to me or listen to any of the other people I mentioned, and all of us are willing to have Q&As, all of us are willing to have discussions. We had one last night over at Pepperdine where a lot of the student groups who are on the left, I'm talking about the same sort of minority student groups you're hearing about at Penn State, decided that instead of boycotting, they would show up and ask questions, and we had a perfectly nice conversation. But unfortunately, there is a part of the left, as distinguished from, I think, liberals at large, there's a big part of the left, and it's growing, that says that it is incumbent to protect the campus from ideas that are dissenting, and everyone who dissents must be thrown off. And they continue to push for the idea that these campuses should be conservative-free and should be complete safe spaces for people on the left. Not only because they think that conservatives are going to convince a lot of people, but also because they actually just think conservatives are evil. Right? I think that they really think that people like me are there to do them harm. And when I show up and it turns out that I'm a relatively non-threatening character and I've never really beaten anyone up in my life for several reasons that you can imagine, then, you know, that's the impact.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. To be fair, I agreed with most of what he said, to be honest with you. Own personal views on abortion here is that you shouldn't have one. However, obviously I'm quite religious, so it does stem from religious beliefs as well. However, with that being said, I'm still pro-choice. For the simple fact of the matter is that if you ask me what my personal opinion on abortion is, I would tell you. However, at the same time, I'm not a woman. I will never have to go through that procedure and everything else. And, you know, obviously I can never become pregnant. So the way I see it is, if you go and get an abortion, fair enough. Whether you've made the right choice in God's eyes is between you and how you perceive God, as far as I'm concerned. So, but in regards to what he said, obviously, about there being, you know, certain elements on the left, and I'm considering myself to be relatively left-wing, you know, that are, you know, violent in regards to, you know, protesting that dissenting views shouldn't be allowed on campus. I kind of agree with him on that, because as far as I'm concerned, like, it's one thing if he's jumping up on stage and saying, you know, Jews are bad, black people are bad, and so on and so forth. By all means, protest the hell out of him. But in regards to him just having dissenting views, yeah, you shouldn't protest him for that. I mean, boycott it by all means. You know, show up and try and debate him in the Q&A if you'd like to. But yeah, and it's like when he got into, because that was part of it was, I think, one of his most popular videos with the Boy Scout thing. And because I've seen that particular clip, I've seen it a few times now, but the one thing I've noticed is that a lot of these people, just because you've become aware of a social issue, or any issue for that matter, doesn't necessarily make you an expert on it just because you've read a few articles online. Because, for example, I'm Muslim, and even though I can have a discussion with someone about the basis of Islam and clear up some of the more common misconceptions that people have about Islam, that does not then mean I'm ready to go for a debate at Speaker's Corner. I'm not. I would be destroyed in a debate at Speaker's Corner because I don't have enough knowledge to be able to hold my own there yet. So, yeah, so my only advice in regards to that is if you're truly going to have a debate with someone like Ben Shapiro, you need to not only know your own arguments inside and out, you need to know the counter-arguments inside and out and have counter-arguments for the counter-arguments. But, yeah, so that was this one, guys. Let me know what you guys thought in the comment section. If there's anything else you would like me to react to, please let me know. And until then, peace.